Hello and welcome to another episode of the Startup Operator Roundup. I'm Roshan Karyappa.
And I'm Gunjan Saha, and together we'll be breaking down the biggest headlines from India's growing startup ecosystem. In today's episode, we'll be discussing Mr. Narayana Murthy's comments on how India's work culture needs to change. Now, Roshan and I are split in our opinion, so we'll be trying to find some common ground.
No points for guessing who's on what side of the divide there, but yeah, we'll see.
Next, we'll also be discussing the recent announcements which Airtel and Jio made at the Indian Mobile Congress. Very soon, we may have our own Starlink services.
Interesting.
And well, probably you're listening to this episode on the day Mamaearth IPO is getting announced. So we'll be sharing our insights on what's our take on the stock. Moving on, we'll be speaking about Rapido's new strategy to venture into the cab hailing and hyperlocal delivery services, taking on the likes of Uber and Ola. And well, if you have been using Instagram, LinkedIn in the past few weeks, then I'm sure you would have seen a OneCard ad. And their fiscal results were announced, and they spent 1,000 crores to earn 500 crore rupees in FY 2023.
If you haven't seen the ad, one card. I'm sure you'll see it now.
The mobiles will pick it up.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to get ads for sure, right? Yeah. My phone is right here.
Alright, so stay tuned as we break down these topics. And before we begin, please do like this video, share this video so that the algorithm will refer our content to more viewers like you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel for regular updates. Another thing before we get started, this has been a tough weekend. We were all saddened by the demise of Matthew Perry, or as you all know him as Chandler from Friends. He really constituted a big part of my teenage years. I remember in my friend circles, a lot of references were made on the series, and it'll be difficult to imagine the whole Friends group without, that person who has that on-the-spot sarcasm, the hilarious jokes.
Yeah. I got really nostalgic today, this morning when I heard the news. It is also a critical part of my growing up years. I mean, who has not watched Friends at least 3 or 4 or 5 times, right? I mean, there were the Friends camp and the Seinfeld camp, and I belonged in both actually. Although I do think Friends is way better. No offense to the Seinfeld guys. But Chandler was wit and sarcasm personified. And I think Matthew brought a lot of authenticity to that character, right? He had a very troubled life. Very tragic news. Anytime this happens, he was only 54 years. So tough times, right? As perhaps Chandler would have said, could we be more emotional?
All right, so let's get started. So in a recent podcast with former Infosys CFO Mohan Desai, Mr. Narayana Murthy, who we all know as the founder of Infosys, he commented that, India's work culture needs to change. The youth needs to put in 70 hours a week for India's development so that, we can catch up on the progress made in the past 2 and 3 decades. He further explained that India's productivity is among the lowest in the world. Now, of course, this suggestion was met with a lot of flack from techies, HR professionals, trade unions, and gig workers. They argued that this was exploitation, illegal, counterproductive, and infringing on fundamental rights. So much so that Suraj Nidhiyanga, who is the General Secretary of Karnataka's State ITS Employees Union, says, quote unquote, "It is only a thinly veiled endorsement of more inhuman exploitation of the Indian working class. Forcing employees to work longer hours would not only lead to physical and mental exhaustion, but also infringe upon their fundamental rights." Now, that is not a light comment to make.
Yeah, so look, I mean, any nation, right, whether it's the US or South Korea, whatever, think of any developed nation, has had 1 or 2 generations really struggle, work hard, and simply improve the circumstances, right? I mean, you think of the US, for instance, you have the greatest generation, the folks who lived in the 40s and the 50s thereafter, right? I mean, really worked their ass off, right? I mean, you had them coming out of the depression. And all of the riches that we see today, where, the US is at a $70,000 per capita, it's not an accident, right? And it's not people working 30 or 40 hours a week. I mean, it's a lot of work by a lot of people to enable that. And now, I mean, you can talk about work-life balance and mental health and this and that and all of that. But that's a luxury that was afforded by a good 1 or 2 generations that have worked their ass off, right? See, in my opinion, it's always success is equal to, your talent into hard work into opportunity. And there's only one of those variables that you can truly control, right? Which is hard work. That's it. You can only control the amount of work that you put in. Everything else, opportunity is a matter of circumstance, luck, whatever you call it. Now, Naval says that you can maximize that, and I do believe that, right? I mean, you can do that to an extent, but talent is what you are born with, right, to a degree, and what you work on. So the only variable in that equation is hard work. And if your objective, again, I say this with a bold and underlined, right? If your objective is to be the best at what you do, right, irrespective of whether that is IT or sports or medicine or whatever else, right? If your objective is to be the best at what you do and to maximize your earning potential, then you should really work your ass off, right? And whether you do this for yourself, or whether you do this for an employer, or whatever else kind of format works best for you, do that, right? But if you are less than 30 years of age, then really there's no excuse for you not to center everything you do around work, right? Work should really consume you, because those are the best years of your life from just from a responsibility perspective, right? If you're in your 20s, people don't have too many expectations from you, right? And your brain is fairly malleable, right? So if you find a great mentor, if you get to do good work, you should just iterate and double down, really double down. It might sound like old-fashioned advice, and it's old-fashioned for a reason, right? Because it is true and it works, So, which is not to say that you should not hang out with your friends, which is not to say that you should totally abuse your health, which is not to say that you should not focus on family. Hey, I mean, all of those things are important too, but you should kind of make them work, right? I mean, you should just work harder. Now, there are compromises to be made, and I won't say that, you will be able to do all of these things equally well, but you have to figure what is best for you at a certain point of time, right? So yeah, I think it's perfectly rational thing to say for Mr. Murthy, and he has had support from pretty much all of the founders, right? I saw Bhavish Agarwal of Ola as well tweeting in support. I kind of agree with that.
Okay, see, you're saying that we do need to work hard, and of course that's absolutely right. But the question here, is it about putting in 12 hours a day, right, so that we achieve 70 hours a week, or is it about being productive? Is it about improving your productivity? Because let's put some perspective to this, what the 70-hour work week looks like. 24 hours per day, if you're working 6 days a week for 12 hours per day, remaining 12 hours, 8 hours sleep, 4 hours remain. In a city like Bangalore, 2 hours on road, 2 hours remain. That's for brushing, pooping, bathing, eating. No time to socialize, no time to talk to family, no time to exercise, no time for recreation. Not to mention, companies expect people to answer emails and calls after work hours as well. Then we wonder why young people are getting heart attacks. Now, okay, this is kind of a very satirical breakdown, but think about it, right? After the entire COVID lockdowns happened, we all started focusing highly on mental well-being, on work-life balance and stuff like that. Now, again, not to go too much onto the extremes of it, like saying that, hey, we should only work for as much as we feel like working. But yeah, I think the point which was being trying to made here was that you need to be more productive with the time you spent, right? And if I were to look back from Mr. Murthy's generation, okay, yeah, during that time, probably more time means more productivity, right? But maybe that is not the status quo today. And having said that, right, a lot of my friends are working in companies like Infosys, Wipro, TCS and all. They are being made to put in those hours of work, but you and I, we enjoy a comfortable life. But there are many people out there working in these companies who are expected to put in these hours, but they're not getting the worth of it.
So let them not work for those companies. No, who's holding them at gunpoint and asking them to work for them? See, it's a like I said, right? You figure out the employer, you figure out the format, whether you want to freelance or whether you want to full time or you want to moonlight, etc. You figure out what format works best for you, right? But it's not owed to you. It's not something you're entitled to. It's something that you have to work to sort of deserve, right? Nobody just hands you a job of your dreams,
Right.
right? Nobody just hands you your salary. I mean, you have to create some kind of value, right? And you have to figure what format works best for you. Now, okay, fine. If 70 is not the number, then work 65 hours, 62 hours, 64 hours. I don't know, right? You figure what that number is for yourself, right? But the point of this, and people do get hung up on the actual number, right? Because
Yeah.
sometime back, I think the Bombay Shaving Company guy also said, or Bombay Shirt Company, I always get confused between one or the other, right? He also said that, as a young person, you should work 16 hours a day or something. And people were just so hung up about that as well, right? So, look, I mean, the number is immaterial, right? You figure whether it is 70, 69, 68, 62, whatever number works for you, right? But the point is to sort of center your life around work, because these are the most important years from a work perspective, right? And your trajectory after that really, really depends on the foundation you build in your 20s.
Right.
No successful person I have seen has not done that, right? No successful person I've seen has not done that, especially in corporate or startups or whatever else, right? Look, I mean, even a freak like Sachin Tendulkar, right, had to be the hardest working person in the cricket field to achieve his dreams, right? And I mean, it really depends, man. I mean, it depends like what you're really going for, right? If you want to have more holistic experiences, and if you want to make work one of those many things that you are focused on, just go ahead and do that. But don't expect that consequences will be to everyone's. It won't be an equal outcome, basically, right? Because I can't, however smart I am, however intelligent I am, I can't outdo someone who is outworking me. I can't do that, right? There is a time when it will catch up. I mean, I tweeted about this some time back that quantity has a quality of its own, right?
Yeah.
No matter how productive you are, no matter how much chat GPT and AI and this and that you use, right? I mean, if someone is just putting in like even 1 or 2 hours every day more than you, that compounds like crazy, right? And any successful person, I mean, does that. So it's, see, again, it's a free world, right? Do what you feel is right for you. But Mr. Narayana Murthy is absolutely right in saying what he said. That's my opinion. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
Right. I'm
Well-
saving you some work.
Well, moving on to the next topic, India might very soon have its own, or rather have our own Starlink. In the recently held Indian Mobile Congress, Reliance Jio launched the Jio Space Fiber, which is a satellite broadband service to provide high-speed internet access to remote locations in India. It's already available in Gir, Korba, Nabarangpur, and ONGC Jorhat. And of course, they're planning for nationwide expansions. And along with Jio, Airtel is also entering the satellite broadband market with the upcoming OneWeb satellite communication service. But while this is happening in the private sector, there was a state-owned initiative as well, which I was not aware of. It was called the Bharat Net project, which was led by Bharat Broadband Network Limited, or BBNL. This program aims to connect 7,000 gram panchayats in India using satellite internet. And after a successful pilot in Arunachal Pradesh in 2022, BBNL plans to expand the satellite services to other northeastern states as well. Now, satellite broadband, of course, has its own advantages. You can get internet access any remote corner of the world. But something that really slows down the adoption is the cost, right? Initially, we just had Starlink, and if I'm right, I think to use Starlink in India, you have to pay a monthly fee of $90 to $110 per month, which is almost 10 times the cost of broadband services in the country. Now, given that more players are entering this space, competition is going to increase, which might subsequently bring the costs down. But at least till the foreseeable future, I think just because of the cost of launching satellites and installing the ground equipments, the end users will need to bear a premium. So what's your take on that? What's the future of
It'll
satellite
definitely
broadband?
get cheaper, right? I mean, any new technology early in the curve, obviously someone will have to foot that price of innovation, right? and we're early in that curve right now, in that adoption curve. And so, which is why, I mean, you're talking about the costs that you're seeing. And by the way, $100 is not that bad, typically, right? I mean, if you think about it, from where it's being used and so on, right? I mean, whether it is someone who is working from a remote ranch in Texas, or whether it is a situation like the Russia-Ukraine war or something of that sort, right? I mean, if you are in a place where there's absolutely no network, that $100 could mean life or death, right, for you, or it could mean whether you earn or not. So I think on a need basis, I mean, that could still be fine, right? But although I think that cost will easily drop down, right, for sure, right? Given the number of satellites we're setting up, right, and plus, I mean, the cost itself coming down for every satellite launch. So for sure, I mean, that's going to happen. I think it's great to have another option. I mean, I think the greatest advantage with this is the mobility aspect, right? Which is that you can move your router and pretty much set up wherever. So that offers a great deal of flexibility, and given how remote has sort of flattened the world a second time over, right? And given that maybe whenever virtualization kicks in to mass adoption, we will need solid internet infrastructure, right? And this is what is going to help us in that time, right? And also, I mean, see, right now the telecom market is essentially basically 2.5 players, right? I mean, you have Airtel, Jio, and then we, right? But so I won't be surprised if the government steps in on a few of these measures and does things of their own, right? Like the BBNL thing that you mentioned. So yeah, that's par for the course, I think. I mean, just a hunch that I think they might do something. Yeah.
We have all spoken about the Jio, democratizing internet in the country, but still today, 40% of our country's population do not have access to internet, and majority of this portion consists of rural areas being the most affected. So yeah, I think government initiatives like the BBNL will definitely step up things, but I also think the primary use case for satellite broadband would be the armed forces. And given that they primarily operate in the northeastern states, Jammu Kashmir and neighboring areas, I think over there, they will be the ones who will be bringing in the whole adoption for the masses. All right. We have the first IPO coming up for this year.
Wow.
I mean, first startup IPO coming up this year. That's of Mamaearth. And well, there's a lot of chatter going on as to like how is the company valued, whether the 10,000 crore plus valuation is actually justified or not. So let's try to break down the financials for you. Mamaearth's parent company called Honasa, they faced losses in FY23. This was primarily due to the company writing off the 155 crore investment it made in 2021 for acquiring Momspresso, a content platform. Despite the losses, the company's operating revenues rose by 58%, and in Q1 of FY24, the company managed to turn things around and reported a profit of 25 crores. For the IPO, they've set a price band of 308 to 324 rupees, and this values the company at 10,423 crores or $1.25 billion. This is a 7x multiple on the valuation of FY23 trailing revenue and a 5.6x on FY24 run rate. Now, Mamaearth originally was an 1,800 crore company, right? And it took the founders of Mamaearth around 7 years to build a 1,800 crore company. And now they pivoted to a house of brand strategy to further grow the business. The company has 6 personal care brands under its umbrella. However, Mamaearth is the largest and the most profitable one among them. Others include Dermaco, Aqualogica, Ayuga, BBlunt, and Dr. Sates. And if you combine all of this, their income is still not even half of what Mamaearth is doing. Right? These brands have a lower offline presence and higher marketing costs compared to Mamaearth. And Mamaearth, of course, has recently been facing a lot of competition from D2C brands. Now, given this context, what do you think of the 10,423 crore valuation?
Well, it's certainly better than the 15 or 20,000 crores that they were initially suspected to have asked for, right? So yeah, I mean, some sense of reality itself. But even at this valuation, right? I mean, it's not cheap by any measure, right? In fact, I mean, if you assume that they will make 100 crores of profit, right? A 10,000 crores, I mean, imputes 100x on price to earnings, right? Which is insane. Like, I mean, HUL probably is trading at around 60 or 70 or whatever that is, right? And HUL is HUL, of course, right? But it's an interesting strategy, nevertheless, right? That you are essentially a marketing and branding company, right?
Yeah.
Because all of the manufacturing is all contract manufacturing. They're working with the folks and sourcing it, right? And they are shipping products at lightning speed. At lightning speed, maybe a couple of years back they were at about 90 products a year. They're now at about 250 plus products, right? Which is an insane amount of
No, but even on that, right,
SKUs.
I think we discussed this in one of our previous rounds when Mamaearth announced their plans for IPO. Um, I remember we discussed that the top selling SKUs are only like very few. Even
That's
though they
always
have
the case, right? I mean, see, HUL has about 40 years or maybe more, time in the market to sort of have those serious like hits in terms of their brands, right? I mean, whether it's Ariel or whoever else, right? So it'll take time, right? It's always going to skew in a Pareto distribution way, right? I mean, it's going to be the top, your 10% of the brands that will make 90% of the revenue and so on. That's always the case for any recognized brand, for sure, right? But the amount of product they're putting out really makes me think that they might hit it out of the park with a few of these, right? And then double down on that. That seems to be the strategy, actually, right? So it's definitely interesting. I mean, closer to the IPO, obviously they've reduced their marketing spends and so on. It's gone down from 40% to around 33%, right? And it has been going down as well. Now, I don't know how the retail investors will sort of look at this, right? Because post 2021, post Zomato, Nykaa, Paytm, and all of those, right? I mean, post all of that, I mean, people are a little, suspect of, the startup brands as such listing. Because of what happened previously, right? I mean, a lot of offer for sale, people liquidated, and so on, and kind of it seemed like as though they just dumped it on the retail investors. So we'll have to wait and watch. I mean, I was just checking, even a stellar company like IdeaForge, right? Even their stock is down 50% from the time of listing, right? Not financial advice. We don't want to.
Guys,
We don't want to end up on the wrong side of SEBI and be
Yeah.
one of those finfluencers, who get jacked by SEBI, right? I mean, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, actually, it was true, but one of the finfluencers, SEBI asked him to return about 15 crores or something of that sort, or maybe more than that, right? The guy had a net loss of 2 or 3 crores on trading, right? And his main source of revenue were the courses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, go
Well,
figure.
it's scary. I think we should be very careful of what kind of content
Yeah.
we consume. But hey,
Only consume the
yeah,
best. Yeah.
You know where you get the best content from.
Yeah. Right here.
So yeah, anyway, to wrap up this topic, Roshan, are you applying for the IPO?
No, man, I'm spooked as well. So I'm not applying to any of these startup IPOs for a while. Right? I mean, I think the last startup IPO I applied for was Nykaa. And I mean, I kind of sold that at a loss. I regret that. Right? I mean, and see, all of these are interesting businesses, but I just go back to what Rakesh Jhunjhunwala used to say, right? I mean, what you buy is important, but what price you buy is even more important. So yeah, do your diligence and buy or not buy Mamaearth. But this is fantastic from a startup perspective. I mean, wishing the founders and the team all the very best. It is definitely the start of another fantastic journey. And I mean, look at all the umbrella brands that we have right now, right? Whether it's Mensa or Mamaearth and so on. So I think the landscape of consumer brands will look extremely different, going forward. Nikhil Kamath had put out a couple of episodes on this. I mean, I highly recommend checking out his WTF podcast. Fantastic insights on brand building. Yeah.
I mean, it's like just a bit of a sidetracking here. in the way this guy is so smart, right? He
Hmm.
calls the who's who of the industries, takes the gyan from them, and I'm pretty sure he then knows, okay, where's the market heading and where to put in money.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, amazing.
He already has a fund, no? I think a
Yes, the
couple of funds or something.
WTF.
True Beacon, WTF, and so on. Yeah.
WTF is a new fund they announced, which we covered in the last roundup. So if you want to explore more about what is this Nikhil Kamat's new fund, do check it out. Okay, moving on. Rapido is expanding its services to include hyperlocal parcel delivery as well as cab services, taking on the likes of Uber and Ola. They're currently testing these features in Hyderabad and plans to launch them in Bangalore and Chennai in the coming weeks. Currently, the ride-hailing market is dominated by Ola and Uber, and hyperlocal is dominated by Dunzo. But I don't think Dunzo is doing too well right now. But one stark difference you'll see between Rapido and the likes of Uber and Ola is that Uber Ola really focused on the tier 1 cities, right? Whereas Rapido, after all that chaos happened of you don't have the permits to operate a bike hailing service, they started focusing more on tier 2 cities. And what really worked well for them are two things. One is provide bike rides to daily commuters who don't have any vehicles, and provide riders to commuters with bikes and help them build a secondary income model. Now, I think these two things are very finely tuned for the tier 2, tier 3 places, and that's kind of why the strategy worked out really well for them. But now they are taking on the likes of Uber and Ola, and not only that, we are seeing a lot of companies like Blue Smart, right, who are differentiating themselves by offering EV fleets.
Yeah.
So that's also another space we have to keep an eye out for. But what do you think of this development?
See, this ride-hailing platform space, right? I think it's going to open up big time. Now, we've seen Mamaearth as well kind of open this up, right? By the way, we spoke to Vimal, who's the co-founder of Mamaearth on the podcast. The episode should be published sometime maybe in the next month or so. Right? But basically, I think this market, if you look at it, over the last 10, 12 years, I mean, it was a two-person market. And right now, I think it's going to become a multiplayer market for sure, right? Because one thing everyone has realized is it's not a winner-takes-all market, right? The moment, the rides are cheaper on Ola, I mean, people will shift to Ola. The moment, there is more availability on Uber, people will shift to Uber, right? And similar with drivers as well. If there are better incentives on Ola, I mean, I will ride with Ola and vice versa, right? So it's going to be a multiplayer market, and the whole app and platform itself has become a bit of a utility right now. It's not. It doesn't have that same shock and awe that it had, in 2014 or 15, even earlier, right? So there will be a lot more people in this, and they will have to, fight the rules and regulations and figure out, what to do with the policy and stuff, because each state has its own reading of this stuff, right? And so there, the federal structure may not be very good for these folks, right? I mean, they will have to invest in regulations and compliance and all of that, but that's the cost of doing business, I suppose. So we'll have to wait and watch. But from a business perspective, right? I mean, what is the business? The business is, number one, aggregating demand and supply on a platform. Number two, utilization, right? Which is making sure that the rides are 100% occupied. And number three is to increase the value of these rides, right? So, on all of these counts, they will have to start doing things that you mentioned, right? Which is that move into cabs, which is higher value, right? Maybe do hyperlocal, which is to improve utilization, so on and so forth.
Sorry, just to add one point, Rapido is doing a very kick-ass thing, I would say. But not that I'm a big fan of it. They are charging a premium for an assured ride. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure how I feel about that, because as you mentioned, it's a utility right now, right? I mean, if I just compare Bangalore to Mumbai.
No, but that's okay. I mean, they should be able to charge, something for an assured ride. See, because again, right, what is the benefit you're deriving for that cost, right? I mean, let's say, you're late for the roundup, right, which you are routinely, right? And you need a ride immediately. I mean, you pay that $50. Yeah.
No, I agree.
I think that's one thing that consumers in India have to start doing, which is pay for these services.
Right, but I think this just sounds good on paper. Because practically, I mean, think about it. I will not, if I was operating a
Yeah.
auto fleet, I would not accept rides until unless you're paying me a premium. That
Consumer
defeats the
business in
entire.
India is going to be very, very hard as long as people like Gunjan exist. But having said that, even I hate paying for delivery. So, yeah, it's hard. I mean, that behavior shift will happen at some point of time, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, you also mentioned about, this policy and legislations, right? I think in Delhi, they already passed a legislation saying that all mobility aggregators and delivery service providers need to switch to EVs by 2030. Right? The Delhi Motor Vehicles Aggregate Delivery Service Providers Scheme legalizes bike taxis and outlines regulations and licensing of aggregators, provided they are operating electric run vehicles. So I think that's a very positive step. And kind of very soon other states should also follow suit, is what I think.
I think pretty much all of the commute vehicles will become EV soon. It already is happening.
Okay, now let's talk about some business performance stories, specifically that of OneCard and OfBusiness. So OneCard has increased its revenue from operations by 6.4x in FY23. They also spent 60% of its operating revenue on advertising promotional expenses in the fiscal year, which resulted in a net loss of 405 CR. On a unit level, that means the company spent around 1.85 rupees to earn 1 rupee in operating revenue. Now, OneCard as a company, they had entered the Unicorn Club after a 100 million round, which was led by Temasek in the same fiscal. Then they raised $425 million to date and has been valued at 1.3 billion. It is also looking to raise another $100 million round without any increase in valuation. Now, just on the face of it, it kind of comes across that, hey, I need to raise more money so that I can spend more on marketing and then again acquire new customers at a premium. Now let's contrast this with OfBusiness, right? That recently posted a revenue of 15,342 crores for FY23. Their GMV or gross merchandise value grew by 114% and their profits rose by 130% to 463 crores. OfBusiness was valued at $5 billion after a $325 million Series G round.
Terrible joke.
OfBusiness was valued at $5 billion in December 2021. And Oxizo, which is a lending arm of OfBusiness, has also reported a profit after tax of 197 crores in FY 2023. Now, two different types of businesses and two very different business stories as well. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah, it's a study of contrasts, right? I mean, if you look at OfBusiness, I just absolutely love their business, right? I mean, they're actually three businesses. So they have the software, the financing, and the marketplace, right? And their lending business is doing remarkably well as well, that I hear, right? I mean, and they've done all of this underwriting, everything from first principles itself. So kudos to them. I mean, we had Vasant, who is one of the co-founders of OfBusiness, on the podcast way back when, maybe a couple of years back. We'll link to the episode. I mean, you guys should definitely check it out. It was a fascinating conversation. And then we have OneCard, right, which is spending to acquire users and having a flat round as well, right, at the same valuation. It's just I mean, I guess like it's also a matter of it's also subject to the kind of businesses they're running, right? Which is that, OneCard, BNPL has been hit really badly, right? They still have to acquire users, but at the same time, they have to be careful because the business and the unit economics is not that great, right? And then you have this other end with the whole manufacturing and lending and so on, which is still very much, in demand. Right. So I suppose that is what it is, right? I mean, it might be slightly unfair to compare the both of these at this stage, right? Because both of them are, in different parts of their journey right now at this point. So let's see. But I think overall, I like that there is greater emphasis on profitability, greater emphasis on sustainable growth, because those are the things that we have to chase, right? And, the macro is not that great right now, and people are saying that, for a year and a half, I mean, things are going to be pretty much around the same, right? So which means that, I mean, these companies will have to work harder to save their dollar and make sure that, they have runway to last this out. Yeah.
Well, we hosted, Anubhav of Rupify and Ajay of Housebank in our first live show that we did. That episode is now out across all platforms, so do check it out. Uh, they spoke fantastically on how to build businesses sustainably. So I'd highly recommend you check out that episode as well. Now, before we move on to the talk of the town section for this episode, here are some other fundraisers of the week. Ola Electric raised 3,200 crore rupees or $380 million in equity and debt funding from Temasek and State Bank of India. PMI Electromobility, which is an electric bus manufacturer, they raised 250 crore rupees or $30 million from Piramal Alternatives, which is the Piramal Group's fund management business. And SaaS startup Blue Birch has raised $6.37 million from Cornerstone Ventures and Capital to Be. Well, some really shocking announcements.
Terrible joke.
Very
But yeah.
electrifying announcement, fundraisers.
Anyway, let me save you guys from the even more terrible jokes. But it's looks like the volumes have kind of caught up, right, on Ola. I do see a lot of service issues, though. I don't know. I mean, if it's some kind of availability heuristic or whatever, that anytime I open my Twitter, I see a few of these issues on service. But the volumes seem to have picked up, and there are no news of any blasts and accidents and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Do
yeah.
you remember in this rounders we used to discuss, this scooter catches fire, or this EV catches fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that we don't have that anymore.
Thank God, really. I mean, because that was terrible. But they're going to see some competition, right? I mean, Hero's Vida is apparently doing really well, right? Early signs are that it's caught on, right? Ola's price point is attractive, though. That's something that I think they got right. I mean, it'll be interesting to see after all the FAME 2 subsidy is gone, how they'll make it work. So another 20-30K more, and maybe the big guys will probably come in and sort of tilt the scales in their favor, right? But either way, it's going to get very interesting. A lot of this stuff is also getting commoditized, whether it's the battery and other aspects of it, right? So yeah, interesting times for sure.
All right, so for the talk of the town section, Jason Lemkin put out a nice series of tweets which kind of breaks down the Freshworks business. So Freshworks hasn't been immune to macro issues, but its bigger customers continue to grow and scale at an impressive rate. It is at approximately 600 million ARR today, growing at 20%, but the biggest customers are growing much faster. Here are 5 interesting learnings. Number 1, bigger customers keep growing, but SMBs have slowed. Number 2, leveling up product-led growth to accelerate SMB customers, including more attention to the onboarding experience. Number 3, the big growth today is in the $50,000 plus or the $100,000 plus customers. Soon they will be the majority of the revenue. Number 4, automation and AI is already a big deal. Over 220 million transactions are automated in whole or in part. Number 5, moved to a 71% annual contracts from 54% in 2019, as have gone more enterprises. And there are a few others as well. Like for example, the NRR is being stable. Then for almost every other SaaS leader, Freshworks has gotten much more cash efficient. The free cash flow has swung from -3% to +10% in just 1 year. Jason also predicts that by 2026, Freshworks will be a $1 billion ARR company. Now I think that's not a very bold prediction, but I mean, it's just there in the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, it's SaaS compounds, right? And if you just conservatively take the same growth rate and extrapolate it further, you can see the $1 billion in the couple of years or more that he mentioned, right? What I want to focus on here is the phenomenal execution versus the macro. People are right to be worried about the macro, but I do feel that, it's analysis paralysis right now for a lot of folks, right? I mean, it's just too much undue focus on the macro impacting everything, right? Now, at 600 million ARR, if Freshworks is doing this, right, then your startup at 1 million, 10 million, 20 million ARR really does not have any excuse, right? Unless it is one of those extreme cases, right, where you're kind of selling to a market which has been badly hit and is not moving at all. right? I think the place for you to look at is on the inside, right? Fix your sales execution, really build product, improve productivity, cut costs, all of those things, right? And get yourself in shape, right? Because those are things that you can do something about. You can't do anything about the macro, right? You can't go and fix interest rates or inflation, right? But this is stuff that you can work on. And, you could say that this is easier said than done, but hey, this is the only option available, right? I mean, you can only crib about macro for as long as, you can, right? But this is very promising, because look at Freshworks, right? Freshworks is primarily SMB, right? But now they're saying that, they might become more enterprise than SMB. Enterprise being defined as 50 or 100K kind of customers, right? And usually when the situation is tight, when the markets are tough, SMB has a shit ton of churn, right? But they've somehow managed to hold off the churn. I think that net retention revenue, right, is basically showing up because the enterprise customers, because the 50K and 100Ks have gone up. I mean, it's hiding some of that SMB churn very well. But even so,
boosted the pricing. They've increased the pricing.
Yeah, they've increased the pricing as well. But yeah, so those things might have made up for the NRR as such, right? But otherwise, it's a great story, really. I mean, the way they've been able to execute is amazing, right? Now, the other thing is, I mean, if you look at Freshworks' valuation right now, it's about hovering around $5 billion, which I would say is an 8 to 9 sort of a multiple on revenue. And that is at public SaaS, right? So you can kind of think how it is for private SaaS companies that have raised at, 20x, 30x, 40x, over the last couple of years, right? I think private SaaS investing is going to be very, very challenging, because, if a public SaaS player is available at, 8 or 9 times multiple, and I think 8 or 9 times is on the higher side, you will find folks trading at 5 or 6 as well. Right, then why would you invest at with more ambiguity at a higher multiple in private SaaS, right? I mean, that's something that I don't know how it will be resolved, right? So you're going to see a lot of down rounds. You're going to see not so many growth rounds in SaaS for sure.
Yeah, but what I really like about this story is how they have focused on the onboarding experience for SMBs, because as you said, right, like your majority of the revenue might come from an enterprise customer, but again, selling to an enterprise is very different from selling to SMBs, right? And what Freshworks is doing is they're kind of focusing on content to capture that demand, have a self-serve discovery, and they are putting in their effort to onboard this customer, which I think kind of helps with the churn prevention.
Yeah. No, I think they have a nice PLG motion going as well. The 5K, 10K customers apparently closed in about 20-25 days.
Yeah.
Right. And with those folks, I mean, it's all about the onboarding experience for sure.
Awesome. All right. So that was a pretty long conversation, but we hope you enjoyed the show. From our side, there's one article we would highly recommend you to check out, which is How Zapier Grows Automating Growth. This is an article by Jared Herman. He talks about the lessons on scaling to 230 million ARR, acquiring 3 million users, and reaching a $5 billion valuation with just $1.3 million in funding.
It's a fantastic story and very, very actionable insights as well. So this is on our recommended reading list. Yeah. Do check it out. If there are other things that you would like for us to do, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. And also, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video so that, more people like you can discover our content. And apart from that, if you want updates to be delivered straight into your WhatsApp inbox, do not forget to click the link in the description below. Alright folks, and don't forget to follow us on social media for regular updates. And we'll be back again with more exciting developments from India's growing startup ecosystem in the next roundup. Until then, take care and have a great week.
See you guys.